What's up everyone? Today's video is going to be making a backyard pond. This is something I've been wanting to do for a really long time, so I'm pretty excited for it. This is going to be a really beginner friendly pond. Stay tuned. This is the space that the pond is going to be made in. Measured out, it is about 114 inches width-wise, and then length it's about 140 inches. So it's roughly about like 9 feet by 13. Well, the house will help provide shade for half of the pond, and you know, if you're to have fish or anything, that's where they would go. So that's why I picked it. These plants will eventually go. We'll just dig it out and remove it. As you can see here, I just kind of used a line to kind of map out just the general shape that I want of the pond. I'm sure that it'll change as I go on, but I recommend that you do that as well because it's just a good idea to have an idea of the pond.
Alright, so what kind of pond video would this be without some good old fast forwarding and voiceover? I'm pretty sure you don't want to see me digging the whole time, so please enjoy my voice as we skip over the boring parts and talk about the important ones.
I purposely left a little bit of space right here between like where the actual pond would be and the edge because I want to put like rocks right here. Something to keep in mind when you're doing it is it's like right here. I purposely made this like little indent because I want people to be able to come on here and be able to step, you know, a little closer and look at it. So yeah, this is what it is so far, and please enjoy the rest of digging.
So, as you may have guessed, more digging, which is what most of the beginning of this video will be. But one thing here is I highly suggest that if you can, have as much help possible, family or friends, just anyone to help you dig, because it'll be a lot more digging than you would expect.
One thing that was not smart on my end that I did was I kind of put all the dirt onto this tarp when I should have just did it straight onto a trailer like I'm doing now. Now I'm taking quite a bit of time to have to transfer all of this dirt onto there, which could have been done earlier and prevented all of that.
So yeah, really make sure you have an efficient method for transporting all the dirt and what you're going to do with it afterwards. Luckily for me, my parents had a lot of side projects around the house that they wanted the dirt for, so that's where I ended up putting it.
Stay tuned tomorrow. So this is day 2. As you can see, just kind of leveling off the first layer. Emptied out the dirt this morning, so we got a new trailer to work with. This right here is just all right here is just rocks of clay, and it's just really dense at this bottom.
So this clip right here is really cool because it's kind of where the pond really starts to come to life and where it's easier to imagine it in your head. If you feel like in the beginning during digging you're not really seeing it, just kind of give it some time, keep working at it layer by layer, and then it'll come together eventually.
We've got the first layer, and then I kind of made like a rough outline of what the second layer is going to look like. As you can see, it's clay, so it's super hard. Yeah, it's going to be tough to dig through.
At this point, the outline was coming together pretty nicely, so we just started going ham on digging and clearing up some of that dirt. One very important piece of advice I would emphasize is making the pond a solid 5 to 10 inches deeper than the ideal depth that you want it at, because when adding in the pond liner and the rocks and everything, it becomes a lot more shallow. So I kind of touch up on the mistake I made later on in the video.
Pond is about complete here. We put a tarp over it, so if it rains, it doesn't mess up everything we're doing. The tarp should be arriving in about a week or so. So next time you hear from us, we'll be putting the tarp on it.
I didn't get any actual footage of the installation of the pond liner itself, but we do also have a thin underlay underneath it just to prevent any rocks and sharp objects against pressure to damage the liner and cause a leak. At this point, the liner is installed and I'm just kind of adding in some rocks, and then I begin filling up the pond. I made a ton of mistakes during my first initial time around, so yes, spoiler alert, I end up destroying everything and redoing it again, but there's a lot of mistakes that I made. One, obviously, I should have made it a lot deeper. I should have put in more rocks here. As I'm filling it up, you can see there's tons of dirt and water because obviously, naturally, rocks are going to have dirt on them. And so when I filled it up, the water is pretty murky. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if you want clear water, what my biggest recommendation would be is fill up the pond, wash off all those dirt from the rocks, and then actually pump the entire thing out, and then refill it you're going to have really nice clear water. I obviously didn't do that this first time around, and yeah, it looked terrible, so don't make that mistake. A lot of this is me setting rocks around the perimeter. Obviously you want to hide that pond liner as much as you can, and that was what I was attempting to do with these rocks. My recommendation would be getting really big ones and covering the area, or kind of putting rocks along the perimeter and then filling it with gravel and finer rocks. I do that eventually throughout, but if it's your first time around and you want to hide that pond liner, that's how I'd recommend doing it instead of what I'm doing now. So this was the Pond Boss filter kit with the pump from Amazon. It was about $65 and it was advertised as 500 gallons. Well, my biggest recommendation is for your filter, don't go cheap. I was trying to go the cheap route here, and so I just got, the cheapest one on Amazon, but obviously this is the water clarity of your pond, so go with a quality one and don't skip out on it.
Unfortunately, there was a unknown leakage. This area, as you can see, water has like pooled up underneath the liner, and eventually the ground is gonna erode. We have just decided we are going to take all the rocks and all the water out, and we're gonna redo the entire pond. Part of the pond process is doing it right the first time, and maybe we rushed into a little bit, but we also just decided that we wanted to make it a little deeper. Keep in mind that whatever seems deep to you, you have to make it even more deep.
As most things go in life, if you do it right the first time, you shouldn't have to do it again. For me, that wasn't the case. I admit at the time, I definitely rushed it because I just wanted to, see the pond come together and add fish into it, but it can't be emphasized enough that essentially what you're doing is creating a world or an ecosystem for whatever aquatic creatures you decide to put in there, so give them a good home where they can thrive and grow in. It's also important to keep in mind as you're building it to remember that you'll be seeing this every single day, so make it something that's very visually appealing, exciting to look at, beautiful, because every single time you go outside you should be admiring your work of art, everything that you've put together.
I didn't record it on screen because I didn't think it would work. But so I went in our garage and then I looked for a hose that had the diameter of the pump, and luckily I found something that works. This is a DIY way how to drain your pond. How to take out all the rocks. This is how it's looking. I left it to drain for a bit, and yeah, just waiting for it to totally empty out, and then we'll move the whole liner and do some more digging.
One thing that I really want to mention during this clip is that the type of pond liner is very important what you get. Do not go cheap. Don't go for the one that has the lowest price. Honestly, go for the one that has good ratings, and make sure you have at least minimum 3 to 5 extra feet of pond liner hanging out on the edge, because obviously you want to put rocks on it, you want to bury it under dirt to keep that pond in place. The last thing you want is the sides caving in and your pond just kind of crumbling within itself.
Here is the pond. Never thought I would see it like this again. But time to get working.
So here we are getting rocks for the pond. A lot of digging was actually done off screen, but this is a rock station that we went to. Just another recommendation to wash off the rocks before adding it into the pond. This may seem silly, but it was actually very beneficial and oddly satisfying to do. As you can see, I was sweeping the pond itself and I was getting a lot of little pebbles and little rocks out of it, and it helped to just make the area really smooth, and I think installing that pond underlay a lot more better.
This is the new pond liner. Just finished installing it all the way around. I'm gonna start adding in the rocks now.
I honestly can't rave enough about how much better quality this new pond liner was. I'll link everything down below, but just from the texture to the material to even how it looked, it was 10 times better than the last one. The material is much easier to work with, so it would conform nicer to the curves and the shape of the pond, so that made it much more pleasant to work with. Learning from a lot of the mistakes I made previously, I went out and got a lot more rocks and began placing it along the edges of the walls. This helps for a lot of things. Some of the things is it helps to make it look like a more natural pond, and then as well it holds the pond liner in so it doesn't cave in from within itself. What I was doing here was taking little rocks and wedging it in between the spaces, and in theory this will provide more support and stability.
Make sure you wear gloves when using foam sealant because my hands are now like this and water only made it worse. Charlie, say hi.
Hello, it's Charlie. I'm helping my friend Justin.
Charlie, say hi.
Hello, this is part 2 of helping Justin with his pond. Been a long day, coming along, feeling great about it.
Cool. All right, let's see if this works. A little lopsided, but we got water flowing. To cover up some of the black tarp, I went ahead and I put these rocks on the edge, and then I just filled it with some of these little rocks. To keep the rocks in place and flowing in, I used a little bit of a foam sealant just to hold them down. It's not necessarily a glue, but it just helps to keep it locked in there. For the liner, I'm gonna tuck it under here, and then I'm putting this dirt over it, and then I'm gonna take wood chips, and then I'm gonna put it back on top of it so it'll kind of hide it. This will just help it from eroding and hopefully keep that liner in place. The last load of rocks cover up a lot of that. Quick pond update. Gonna continue to put some rocks on that side just to hide the liner as best as we can. So I am going to redo the waterfall. Kind of a fail on my end, but we're gonna make it something similar to that. It's a really hot day, so I just got another pump running some water to get that water oxygenated for the fish. Yeah, so far the pond is coming together nicely. What I went ahead and did was I dug out all this dirt, and then I dug it in just deep enough to hold in the waterfall amount, and then I tested it out with that rock. I kind of like how it spreads out the water, so I think I'm gonna go with that. This is how the end results look. Pretty good for the most part. Just gonna cover up some of this black area with some moss. Maybe I'll get a different pump to make it a stronger water pressure.
Roughly 3 to 4 weeks later, here's the end result. There's still some work to do hiding the pond liner, but for now I'm just kind of enjoying it. As you can see, the algae is real. Definitely the water clarity from the first clip until now. So make sure you get a UV light or non-toxic algae removal chemicals to add into your pond. Just something to make it look good. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how things turned out and wish you the best of luck on making your own.
Look at these little guys. They're not gonna stand a chance. Okay, you ready for this? Who's gonna get it first?
The bass. Oh.
Oh man.